Check 1 2 1 2 here. Looks like we're trying this. This is the midweek report, and this just trying this here. This is like another thing here that we try to get going on here at the Boxing Source. I tried to do one of these earlier, and it was like kind of crazy or something like that. So um, going through this here, just coming off of what happened just a few minutes ago. We just saw Chris Colbert get stopped. The corner threw in the towel on him. The corner threw in the towel on him. So Chris Colbert got stopped, man. Um, he looked like he was moving around the ring and throwing punches and stuff like that, but none of the punches were really affecting Salcido in that bout. And Salcido just kept going forward, kept going forward, kept going forward, and we just end up seeing Salcido get the win. There, ended up getting a stoppage win, and now I don't know where Chris Colbert goes at this particular point, man. I mean, what can you basically have, because now Chris Colbert has basically been stopped twice, in two consecutive fights. Of course, he had the whole thing there with the Jose Valenzuela rematch, and now here against Omar Salcido, he was just getting beat up a little bit here and there. The more effective punches were pretty much tagging Chris Colbert, and so as a result, that is why you don't got what you got. That's why you got what you got. So now it's like I said, what is going to be the case here now for Chris Colbert? Man, I don't know where it goes from here. I really don't know. I really don't know where it goes from here at this point. You know what I'm saying? What I can say here is, what, uh, he might just go ahead and pack it in, man. He might just go ahead and pack it in. You feel me? He might just go ahead and pack it in. Um, but with that being said, I'm gonna get into the whole thing here with the preview here of what's going down between Tim Tszyu and with Bakhram Murtazaliev, right? You have Tim Tszyu, of course, who is former WBO super welterweight champion. You have Bakhram Murtazaliev, who is the current IBF super welterweight champion. This is Murtazaliev's first defense, his first defense of that title, his first defense of that IBF title, right? He's in there with a record of 22-0, 16 wins by way of knockout, of course, coming off of his knockout win over Jack Colquet in Germany to win that IBF super welterweight title. There was a scrap between those two. There was a number of times that you had Murtazaliev get tagged by Jack Colquet, but then Jack Colquet just couldn't, really take the amount of punishment there from Murtazaliev. You do have some highlights out and about from that particular fight between those two, and of course with Tim Tszyu coming off of his loss by decision to Sebastian Fundora for the WBC and WBO super welterweight titles. He was coming there as a WBO super welterweight champion. Was pretty much favored a little bit because you had Sebastian Fundora coming off of that knockout loss, and Fundora was pretty much as a quote unquote replacement opponent because you had Tim Tszyu that was originally supposed to face who? Keith Thurman. Come on. And Sebastian Fundora was supposed to fight for the WBC interim title on that card on March 30th of this year, but ended up getting elevated as a replacement there for Tim Tszyu. There for Keith Thurman, right? And ended up being a bloody battle between those two fighters. I mean, those first couple of rounds, it looked like Tim Tszyu was really going to put, some hands on Sebastian Fundora, but had an accidental clash with the head of Tim Tszyu and the elbow of Sebastian Fundora that had a serious gash on Tim Tszyu's head, and of course with Sebastian Fundora, was suffering a cut in his nose or his lip or whatever it is, and it ended up being an absolute bloodbath between those two combatants. Absolute bloodbath between those two combatants, and it ended up being a decision there in favor, of Sebastian Fundora, right? So with that being said, you had Tim Tszyu looking like that he was going to go ahead and face Virgil Ortiz Jr. in that Los Angeles Riyadh season fight card in August, but he wasn't necessarily cleared for that particular bout. So Tim Tszyu was pretty much like, sitting out on the shelf and then seeing what would be out there next for him. But looking at, the whole scope of the super welterweight division, we saw what happened there on August 3rd. We saw what happened on August 10th in reference to the super welterweight division. And so Tim Tszyu is like trying to figure out where would he kind of get back in the mix as super welterweight. Well, here you have Bakhram Murtazaliev getting that win over Jack Coquet, getting the vacant IBF title, and now you have Tim Tszyu being pretty much put in position for that. And while they're in the works of that, you see where they could pretty much like have the fight at, and now it's going to be in Orlando, Cerebral Resort in Orlando, Florida, on Saturday night. Okay. Like I said, with the tail of the tape there, Murtazaliev is 22-0 with 16 wins by way of knockout. They're at 6 feet and is 31 years old. Tim Tszyu, 24 wins with that lone loss to Sebastian Fundora at 29 years old at 5'8.5". But given what's going down, given what's happening, and everything, with Tim Tszyu, of course, he had that past fight there with Sebastian Fundora. Faced a couple of guys that have been taller than him as well in over the course of his professional career. So he, isn't necessarily saying that he would be on a quote unquote disadvantage here at this particular point. And given, what, at least what I saw there from Bakhram Murtazaliev is that he looks like he takes a few punches in order to give some punishment out. And that could be something there for Tim Tszyu to be like, hey, I like this style. I really like this style. Someone that's going to be right there, in front of me at times, I'll take it. So looks like, Tim Tszyu is really looking forward to this particular bout. And the question will be, is he going to be a two-time champion? Now, remember, with the WBO title, he ended up acquiring it as a vacant title, so to speak, as he was, the mandatory challenger at the time for the WBO title, which was held by the undisputed champion at the time in Jermell Charlo. But Jermell Charlo faced Canelo Alvarez up there at super middleweight. And with that happening, the WBO said, you know what, let me take that belt. And that's what they did. They took that belt there from Jermell Charlo before he went up and faced Canelo Alvarez last September. And so when Tim Tszyu faced Brian Mendoza, that's when he had the WBO super welterweight title. Feel me? And he was only able to have one defense against Sebastian Fundora. And like I said, we saw what happened now. So now he has another opportunity to become a world champion. It looks like they have him. What is it, favorite, man? You know how I do sometimes here with the midweek report when I look ahead to some of these battles that are coming up here, on Saturday and whatnot, right? So we are going to, what I say, man, the cheap plug, or whatever it is there with the Kings, the Draft Kings, and whatnot. So with boxing, here we're gonna look this up, and we are going to see that, man. Let's see what they got for that night, man, because we got a number of things going down, man. Damn, Yoenis Tellis is minus 1,400 against Johan Gonzalez there within that super welterweight division as well. But they have Tim Tszyu as minus 700. At minus 700. And Bakhram Murtazaliev at plus 475. So yeah, you kind of like see the odds there in reference to all of that. That's pretty sizable. 93% of the bets placed on DraftKings are towards Tim Tszyu. 93% of those money line bets are towards Tim Tszyu. That tells you something there. And they got it minus 160 for Tim Tszyu by knockout, plus 220 for Tim Tszyu by decision, plus 900 for Murtazaliev by decision, and plus 1100 for Murtazaliev by KO. So they're definitely leaning towards Tim Tszyu here, at least on the DraftKings, for him to get the win. And for me, I mean, given Tim Tszyu's battles, particularly within the past couple of years, he's faced Terrell Gausha, he's faced Tony Harrison, he's faced Brian Mendoza, and had that battle with Sebastian Fundora, which was a split decision loss there in a very tight battle there in that. He's also faced amazingly Steve Spark at 154 pounds of the super welterweight division. Yes, the same Steve Spark that has fought all the way down at 140 and has pretty much had like a most of his career at 140. So that was pretty much like a one-off there at 154 for Steve Spark. But yeah, Tim Tszyu has faced a number of these notable fighters that are out there. But with that being said, he is looking to try to say that he will eventually become the top guy at 154 pounds. And, while he's had that setback earlier this year against Sebastian Fundora, there were a few folks that said that maybe he was the one that got the better of Sebastian Fundora over those 12 rounds, but it just didn't end up there with those three judges' scorecards, so to speak. So now he has this opportunity here to become a world champion again, this time for the IBF super welterweight title there against Bakhram Murtazaliev. For a number of folks to pretty much like have Murtazaliev as a significant underdog here, fairly significant underdog here, says a lot. He had, like I said, the fight against Zach Kokay in the last one, and Kokay, of course, is a very notable fighter there in the super welterweight division. Outside of that, you really haven't seen that many notable fights there in the professional ranks there for Murtazaliev. Now, he's been there as far as like a professional for about 10 years. So he's been in the pro game for 10 years. So he has a number of things there as far as like pro experience is concerned, but not to the level of opponents that Tim Tszyu has had, particularly over the past 3 years or so. That's why a number of folks that highly favor Tim Tszyu in this bout coming up on Saturday night, and that's why I favor Tim Tszyu in this bout come Saturday night. It's just about how Tim Tszyu will be able to work Murtazaliev, break him down, and then see if he'll be able to, eventually stop him if he can have that particular opportunity to stop him. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, that is, the kind of like the thing that I have there, leaning at Tim Tszyu being the victor there. Now, I find it interesting, at least very much so, with the thing on BoxRec. BoxRec, for some reason, has Tim Tszyu rated number 5 in the super welterweight rankings, and Murtazaliev ranked at number 7 in the super welterweight rankings. So 2 top 10 guys according to according to the BoxRec. Usually where I go through is the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board, and in there, I see that they have Tim Tszyu rated at number 2, and they don't necessarily have Murtazaliev rated in the top 10 right now. Let me see if I have this thing here. I'm going to see if I could Start the screen share thing there. Yeah, I should be able to do it. You should have it right there. Let me see here if this thing is going. Um, yeah, I'm trying to see if this thing is able to do it, but yeah, you should be able to see it on there or whatnot. If not, then let's see how we got it. Um, but we should have it to the point where, like I said, you have Tim Tszyu there at number two. You don't have Murtazaliev there anywhere. And remember, Murtazaliev is coming in this particular bout on Saturday as the defending IBF super welterweight champion. That's the crazy part. That's the crazy part. But he's not rated there, where you have Michelle Soro or Jesus Ramos Jr. or Brian Mendoza, of course, who, like I said, lost to Tim Tszyu, or to Brandon Adams, who, has, a bout coming up that's supposed to be there on Overtime Boxing. He's going to be having a significant bout coming up there. So, uh, and that is there in the 150-pound division. We got a lot of action there at 154 pounds. Brandon Adams, had been part of this thing here with Overtime Boxing, and he's had this that recent win over Francisco Verón on that fight card on August 30th, which also had Andreas Katsarakis getting a win there over Robert Terry. So Katsarakis versus Brandon Adams is coming up there at the 154-pound division. You also have that thing there, like I said. Ortiz, had that win over Israel, Sergey Boychuk, Israel Madrimov, of course, losing to Terrence Crawford there by decision. You got Sebastian Fundora looking like he's having a future bout here with Errol Spence Jr. So you got a lot of activity there at 154 pounds, but it doesn't surprise me. You've had that type of activity at least, like I've been pointing out multiple times from 2019 to 2022, a number of fights there within the top 10 to eventually have an undisputed champion there with Jermell Charlo there with his win over Brian Carlos Castaño in that rematch over there in California. So that was a good little scrap there. But here, with these particular rankings, you see how you have Tim Tszyu pretty much there right below Sebastian Fundora and above Terrence Crawford. So that's what we got going on there so far within the rankings there at 154 pounds. But here that I kind of like see Tim Tszyu being the eventual winner of the bout coming up on Saturday, and then we'll see how he moves forward with that IBF Super Welterweight title. There have been talk that he might even come back to fight again in December, and that could be against the fighter out there, that had been chomping at the bit, so to speak, to fight Tim Tszyu and Erickson Lubin. Erickson Lubin actually was in attendance at that Pro Box event that just happened over there in Plant City. But remains to be seen if, Erickson Lubin will be able to get something secured against Tim Tszyu, particularly with Erickson Lubin. He's been, coming off an injury and recovering from that and wanted to have that fight with Tim Tszyu. But then Tim Tszyu said, I want to get, in the ring by a certain time. And so that fight didn't necessarily come to fruition again. But shout out to, our guy there, Erickson Lubin. Of course, give a shout out to the boxing source here some time back there. But he, looks like he'll be in action out here really soon. But, with that being said, like I said, with the main event there at the Caribe Royale Resort in Orlando, Tim Tszyu, Bakhram Murtazaliev for that IBF super welterweight title. Now I'm gonna see here, real quick. I was going to share something there in reference to the rec, right? And they should have this here. Like I had that main event there. Tim Tszyu, Bakhram Murtazaliev. You have Cesar Matil Tapia versus Andriy Saavedra there with that's there in the middleweight division with Tapia being undefeated there at 17-0. Saavedra being there with 16 wins and 1 loss, right? You also have Yoenis Tejas going up against Johan Gonzalez. Yoenis Tejas is, one of the many fighters that are under Coach Ronnie Shields. Of course, we had Coach Ronnie Shields on there with War Week Boxing every Tuesday night. Was able to have that conversation with Coach Ronnie Shields yesterday. So he is there, having those final preparations before going over to Orlando for that fight with Yoenis Tejas going up against Johan Gonzalez. Shalom to you, Ben Israel. Listen live here on the Midweek Report. Johan Gonzalez, had been in there against Jesus Ramos. What was it like in May? That was in the May card with that Canelo versus Munguia. I think you had that Johan Gonzalez in there against Jesus Ramos Jr. Right? That was like his last loss. He had like one fight in between that and this fight here with Yoenis Tejas. And Tejas, is coming up in the ranks there, really quick there at 154 pounds. I want to see like how he kind of like shapes up, because at least right now I see Tejas up there at number 8 in the WBC, number 6 in the WBA. As high as number 6 in the WBA. He's there number 15 in the WBO, at least right now. I haven't seen any update in the WBO rankings as of now. Maybe they have like a recent report, but nope. At least as of right now, I haven't seen any updates to the WBO rankings. So, Yoenis says looking like he might be coming up in the ranks there at the WBA at 154 pounds. So you do have that. One of the other notable things there is you do have Gary Antonio Russell coming back in the ring there against Jaden Bernius. We did have a conversation with Gary Antonio Russell on the YouTube channel, but I may take that and also add it to our Rumble channel. For those who haven't followed on Rumble, go ahead and follow on Rumble. We're trying to get things cracking on Rumble. So you want to go ahead and add us on Rumble as well, because we might have some things that we'll add on Rumble that won't necessarily be on YouTube, or vice versa. We'll try to work that out here as we make that conversion. But like I said, there's like a number of fights here that are on this particular card, and yes, it will be on Amazon Prime Video, not Amazon Prime pay-per-view. It'll be on Amazon Prime Video. So you do have that. But like I was saying with the main event there for the IBF Super Welterweight title, we're just seeing here Tim Tszyu, is fully recovered, from those injuries that he suffered in his bout against Sebastian Fundora, and that he'll get right back in the scene here for another world title. It's kind of interesting there, how you have these fighters that have a close loss or whatever it is, and then able to get right back in it and fight for a world title. But that is what Tim Tszyu is doing right here. And if he gets to win, like, it opens the door for multiple fights out there at 154 pounds, So, there's that. So with that being said there, you got that fight card coming up here, on Saturday night in Orlando. For me, I will be, part or at least going to a local card or at least there in the Washington D.C. area. Had of course a interview with one of those fighters that's part of that card in Francois Scarborough Jr. There you would have, like I said, be part of that. That's part of like a pro box thing too. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that you want to go ahead and check out. If you have pro box said they should have something there through YouTube or whatnot. We're gonna have a number of prospects that's going to be involved in that card at Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. So you definitely want to be sure to see if you can check that out if they have that available, out there for the people. You know, this is through No Excuse Promotions. There you see, if you can see, their promoter is Lamont Roach Sr., of course, father of Jordan Roach, you know, and of course Lamont Roach Jr. and head trainer there for Lamont Roach Jr. If y'all know who Lamont Roach Jr. is fighting in December. But that being said, we have a number of fighters there, prospects. Jordan Roach is going to have a second pro fight there against Robert Ledesma. You got Benjamin Johnson, Ben Johnson, that was also involved in the last No Excuse Promotions card that was on Pro Box that included Lamont Roach Jr. when he defended his title at 130 pounds against Figure McCrory, right? So you're going to have Ben Johnson on this card, Jordan Roach on this card. You're going to have David Whitmire on this card, Maximus Garland on this card. You also have Cornelio Phipps on it there against Gary Hampton. And as I mentioned, there, Francois Scarborough Jr., the franchise, will be going up against Wayne Lawrence on this fight card, and it's headlined by Eric Hernandez versus Dwayne Ziegler. So you're going to have a number of these young fighters that'll be featured on this fight card there. So folks will be able to check that out here coming up on Saturday night. So there's going to be a lot of action, there for people to, or fight fans to kind of like check out on Saturday night. So y'all be sure to tune into that. We got a few other fights that are coming up on the schedule. I know that there's going to be some things going down on November 2nd, but also there on October 26th, you're going to have Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis on this following Saturday. That's going to headline that fight card. That's going to be on the zone. And then November 2nd, you're going to have the rematch between Robeson Conceição versus Oshaki Foster. Ray Murray is going to be on that card. Abraham Nova is going to be on that card as well. And also Bryce Mills. I got to see if I can get in contact with Bryce Mills once again to go ahead and set up an interview with him. And then that following weekend is going to be a very busy weekend. It's November 8th, Norfolk, Virginia, Friday night. Keyshawn Davis will be headlining that fight card against Gustavo Lemos. You have DB3, of course, the three Davis brothers, as you're going to have Keyshawn on there. You're going to have Kelvin Davis on there, and, it's supposed to, they're supposed to have the debut of their youngest brother they're supposed to be on there, right? But we got to see if they actually verified it, because at least for me, they haven't like verified any news, there that Keon is going to be off the card. He should still be on the card there against Jalen Moore, So you're going to have those three brothers part of the card. Troy Isley is going to be added on the card. Adela Mason's on the card. You know what I'm saying? And remember, they look like they were going to have a WBO welterweight title fight on there. But Brian Norman Jr. suffered an injury. So that has basically been scratched from the card. So we don't have that. But it's still a very, very good card nonetheless. looks like they added Rice Alim on this card. Now that I hadn't even seen that. Like yeah, to be honest, I had not seen that. Nothing from Top Rank said, that Rice Salim is on this card, man. That's very interesting. That is very interesting that Rice Salim would be added on to this card because yeah, I had not seen anything on at least from Top Rank that said that Rice Salim would be included in that fight card in Norfolk, Virginia. But I'd be interested to see how he performs there in that one. I'll really be interested to see how he performs in that one. But that's still going to be a very good card there in Norfolk, Virginia on November 8th and then November 9th in the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Of course, you have Jerron Boots Ennis going up against Karen Chikaji. And once again, this time for the IBF welterweight title. And Jesse Bam Rodriguez will defend his WBC super flyweight title against Pedro Guevara. You're also going to have Raymond Ford in action, Khalil Cole in action there again at the Wells Fargo Center. So you have 3 of the 4 fighters there in that main card that are there, from the Philadelphia area or whatnot. So that's going to be something as well. But we're going to see if we can get a few more fights finalized on that November 9th card that's going to be live on the zone. And that's the thing about it. Yeah, Cap Quest, man. Chris Cobra let Brooklyn down tonight, man. Hey, actually, I'm not right now. I'm not far from that area. Right now, doing some work around it. NYC or whatnot. But yeah, Chris Colbert, man, I'm telling you, like he was moving around the ring. He was throwing a couple punches here and there, but nothing to really, tag Omar Salcido, man. And so Salcido just kept moving forward and throwing punches and landing a few shots here and there, and then you had that message that was sent out. They were like saying, "Hey, you're gonna have to show me something. You're gonna have to show me something, or else, I'm gonna go ahead and stop this fight." And that's what they said, man. They said, you gotta give me some type of effort, or else, I'm gonna stop this fight. And well, that's what ended up happening. They ended up stopping the fight, and well, like I was saying here at the beginning of this report, I don't know, I don't know what's gonna happen there with Chris Colbert now from this point. I'm not sure. After coming from this loss, I mean, there was no knockdowns, but it was almost like they felt like he didn't give enough of an effort there. Over the course of those 7 or 8 rounds, I think it was stopped in round 8. So at this point, man, you can't get past Omar Salcido, then not sure how you can go through. I mean, this is Salcido who ended up having that loss to Jose Nunez a year ago on Probox, and it was almost like a sweep there by Jose Nunez on that one, and I know Chris Colbert was saying like, hey, this particular bout here is north of 130 pounds, and that he doesn't feel like he will be there long term at lightweight or 135, and that he was going to go back down to 130. But even here in this particular instance, even if you have like Salcido, who has been competing above 135 pounds for a good part of his career, you want to see more tools from Chris Colbert in this sense. And I know that yes, Chris Colbert has a win of sorts over Rayo Valenzuela, who eventually became the WBA champion at 140 pounds, but we all saw what happened in the rematch. And that kind of like was showing more signs of like, well, if you ain't you ain't really doing stuff in order to affect the opponent there, then they're just gonna walk right through you. And it looks like that pretty much happened here in this case with you know what happened there with Chris Colbert against Omar Salcedo is that he just really couldn't have much that affected Salcedo. There was like one point there almost before the end of the fight where he was like getting in a little bit of a clinch. Then he was like coming off the clinch and then landed an uppercut on Salcedo, and it really didn't do much from there. And at least from that point, I'm like, well, yeah, he just looks like he's just moving around, and if he doesn't throw some significant punches, he might tire himself out, whether it's through the legs or just accumulation of punches taken. And I really see like nothing as far as like defense is concerned. Not a catch and shoot, not a serious counter there from Chris Colbert. And well, you see what happened there in this one. And the thing about it is, at least for me watching it live on ProBox TV, there on the YouTube, I was seeing the numbers, the viewing numbers on that. Like that was some high viewership numbers, at least from a ProBox standpoint, there for this particular fight. And this could have been something for where Chris Colbert could have built himself some momentum, get back in the scene, get back in the mix, whether it was going to be at 135, which he said he wasn't going to say it, or at 130 pounds. But now, with this, it's almost like he kind of doesn't have much in the tank, which, doesn't seem right because that was what? His 20th pro fight. He's there at 28 years old. 28 years old, his 20th pro fight, and he ends up getting stopped. And that's the second consecutive stoppage loss there for Chris Colbert. So, like I said before, even with him saying that he would go down to 130 and kind of like be established at 130, it's unknown as to where he goes from here. It really is, because that style that he has, depending on who he's matched up against, it might not work. Like let me see if I could come up with somebody right there at 130 pounds that isn't necessarily like world champion, of course. Like I did mention the whole thing about the rematch that's happening on November 2nd between Sesau and Osaki Foster. But how about this? How about an opponent, former opponent of Osaki Foster's, Eduardo Hernandez, or Mark Magsayo, or Lee Wood? Um, how would Chris Colbert like fare against any of those guys? I don't even think he would kind of like be even matched up with those type of guys. Maybe a Henry LeBron or something like that, or I don't know, even a Mauricio Lara, who's a former world champ. I don't know, Chris Colbert would match up well with some of those guys, especially if he doesn't have a lot of pop behind his punches. I mean, in those 17 wins that he's had, 6 of them have come by way of knockout. And the thing about it is that at times, being able to outbox your opponent can work, but at other times when you have something where your punch doesn't necessarily affect them, and if you don't have good skills in order to get around the ring or prevent yourself from being cut off, then you're in some trouble. And that's what's been happening there with Chris Colbert in these past few fights. He's pretty much been getting in trouble there in that particular sense. So that's gonna be something there, man. But yeah, that's that's tough there for Chris Colbert, man. It's tough for Chris Colbert, but sometimes that's what happens in boxing. That's what happens in boxing, right? But with that being said, there, man, this is fairly a quick one. I mean, it's almost like 11:30 Eastern time or whatnot. Usually I have the midweek report earlier, but I had a sample run there earlier, and it looked like it didn't necessarily go through, so had to redo it. Had to redo it, reschedule it, all that type of stuff. You know. So with that being said, that is it for me for this particular midweek report. Once again, like I said, with the Tim Tszyu Bakhram Murtazaliev fight, go ahead and check out Murtazaliev last fight, the highlights of his last fight there that he had against Jack Koke, where he was able to win the IBF super welterweight title. But you'll see in that particular bout where he has a number of opportunities for Tim Tszyu to take advantage of. And I felt like Tim Tszyu is going to be able to uh, do that. Yeah, Jamel Herring is still active. Yeah, maybe him. I know that that there's been just talking there about Jamel Herring at 130 pounds, of course, former world champion. That Ludabella has been looking for opportunities there for Jamel Herring to try to get fights. I don't know. Maybe they could have Jamel Herring on Pro Box. We'll see. I don't know. But yeah, that would be something there as far as like a last stand of sorts, maybe for Chris Colbert. Who knows? But yeah, this particular performance here, yeah, it wasn't like all too hot, and it's making people. I would say some people might feel like that first fight against Rayo Valenzuela. They might think, hey, maybe he shouldn't have got that one. I don't know. So yeah, that's the thing. So that being said, that is the conclusion here for this particular midweek report. If you can, go ahead and support by hitting the like button. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button there through YouTube or through Rumble. Okay. And also be able to share this particular stream and let people know about the boxing source. So once again, yeah, we do have interviews there with Francois Scarborough Jr. And also Gary Antonio Russell. We're trying to work on getting an interview with Gary Antoine Russell as well. So y'all be on the lookout for that. But with that being said, the boxing source is checking out. So I will catch y'all later. Peace.